Let's see if we can speak. Hola, Mary.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's such a pleasure to have a chat with you. I've been wanting it for a long time. Yes.
I know. Yeah.
And I'm in São Paulo, Brazil, and we have an audience in Chile, and we are here to talk. So let's begin.
Yes.
Mary, how has this year been to you? I mean, it's a unique year. How did it affect you?
Mm. It's funny because when our government announced the lockdown, I was in the studio just about to just take over, and I was preparing for a show that was going to happen in September in Lyon. So it was a solo show in a museum. So of course you can understand the amount of pressure. So of course this museum is big, and I was just like when you 50%, the show was just 50% done, and my mind was just in there. I was immersed in making stuff and just making sure that we finished on time, and boom, we had to stop. So we left in a high, in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so there was a lockdown. The government announced a lockdown, and most of my shows that were supposed to happen overseas were postponed to next year. So it has been a funny year indeed. Very strange year.
Very strange year for sure.
Yeah.
And how has COVID impacted South Africa?
It's not so bad because we were preparing for the worst. There were big holes of state. Oh yeah, big holes of. There's an amusement park not far from where I live, just about. I think it's about 20 kilometers, and
I know that amusement park in Johannesburg. I've been there.
Yeah, well, there's another one. I think it's called the Rent Easter Show. It only happens once a year, around about April. So they were preparing beds. So it was just ready. It was ready. It's a makeshift hospital. People were ready to welcome any disaster that was coming our way. And funny enough, not really. So people were like, okay, we were thinking like this thing is going to kill us all. But yeah, there've been a few deaths, unfortunately. But it has impacted us in a way. Our economy, of course, it wasn't. Our economy is not that strong. But of course, after the COVID, it got shaken a bit.
Yeah.
But things are going back to normal now. Factories are opening, so things are starting to run. So we'll see how it goes, or how the economy will be in a few weeks.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, in what ways do you believe that your work has empowered women symbolically?
It has, in that I'm telling my story. It's a personal story, and of course of course by default I'm a woman, so my stories are from a woman perspective, and a lot of women can relate to that, in that they see themselves in the work. They can relate. It doesn't matter whether your background. It doesn't matter what background you're from. The work can speak to you. So I've received a lot of compliments from a lot of women, where they go, "Oh, actually, this is my story. I can relate to this." Or they go, "This is actually not my story, but I know this story." So it's a familiar South African story. It's just that fortunately I found a way of creating objects out of my stories. I would say writers write, but I create objects. So yeah, so there's a lot of relation. This character that I've created has a 360 view to her. In that doesn't matter what race or what color you are. you have that relation with this character that I've created. So in a way, yes, she has that impact or that power, or a lot of women can relate to her story or the Sophie story.
Yeah. Tell me, who is Sophie? I mean, Sophie is the main feature. What does she represent to you? I mean, who is she?
So in 2009, I had a first solo show at Gallery Momo, just straight out of varsity. And I titled that show Long Live the Dead Queen. So Long Live the Dead Queen, I was paying homage to the women in my family who were all domestic workers. They were domestic workers not by choice, but by laws of this country. And of course, when we're talking about laws of this country, we'll look at apartheid. We'll also look at colonialism in Africa. So I wanted to celebrate this woman who has been left neglected in that she has been double discriminated against. When I say double, I mean because she's black, and secondly she's a woman, and of course those two things are just those two things that they make a woman sit in the back seat in a way. So I wanted to celebrate her, but this Long Live the Dead Queen, this oxymoron title comes from Macbeth. Long live the Queen. The Queen is dead.
Long live the
The
Queen.
Queen. Yeah, the Queen is dead. Long live the Queen. So, but I changed it a little bit. I kind of swapped the words around. Long live the Dead Queen. So when I was constructing or working on that show, I thought, well, if I'm telling my grandmother's story, it kind of makes sense for her to be in the gallery or to tell her stories herself. But I think while I was constructing this Sophie or this alter ego, I realized actually no. For me to bring my grandmother to perform in front of people or my mother, I'll be doing the very same thing that I'm trying to go against. I'm making her work. I'm making her perform in front of people. So what happens if I become my grandmother? I become my mother, and I become my great-grandmother. But of course, becoming these personalities, I needed to take on a personality that will actually envelope all these other personalities. And I came up with this alter ego named Sophie. So Sophie is the next in line, because when I looked at my personal history, all these women, in a way they were passing this baton of servitude from one generation to the next. And then came me, who was born in 1982, South Africa. And of course, things were starting to change. And of course, the fall of apartheid happened in 1994. And I was fortunate in that, in comparison with my mother, I was able to go to varsity and study further and, in a way, live my dreams. And when I'm looking at my grandmother or my mother, they didn't have that chance because of the system. So Sophie's the next in line, who is sitting on the throne of servitude. And in a way, I am playing, I'll say, the puppet master, and all these stories are just unfolding in front of me, and I'm telling them to you. Yeah.
Very nice. Why were you attracted by virtual reality? What made you want to do a work in virtual reality?
It's funny how the story of virtual reality actually landed on my lap. But I've been toying and thinking about the idea of a moving picture. And for me, video was not enough because I had the resources of making a video. Because the VR, we only did it last year, or I know 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But all these years, while I was the objectives, I've been meaning or wanting to make a moving picture, but And of course, I felt like it was limiting in that it was only video. And I thought, well, surely there must be something out there. And of course, over the years, I started learning about virtual reality and start seeing it all over on social media. And I Googled it and wanted to learn more about it. And there was, and then a gallery here in Joburg. Well, kind of also was thinking of this on the same line, like people go to museums, they see pictures hanging on the wall. What happens if this picture is hanging on the wall, kind of immersive, like it takes over you, where you exist in the picture, but not outside? Because when you're looking at a picture, you're just looking at it while it's hanging on the wall. But with VR, there's a possibility, or there's this way of one or the viewer can actually become part of the work. And then Tomorrow Gallery gave me a call, and they said, "Well, we love your work, we love what you do, and this is we have this idea, we have all these equipments. Would you join us and let's make something?" And of course, I was like, "Yes." I've been meaning. It's funny how the universe works, and it happened at the right time. That phone call was received at the right time because I was ready emotionally. Because of course, you have to be ready to make anything. Well, that's my experience. I always want to be ready in whatever I do, like emotionally, whether spiritually, and just cleanse my whole brain and head. And so it happened, and Tomorrow Gallery. And I started working on the show, and it was just a great experience that we actually both, Tomorrow Gallery and I, learned using this new tool, or this new way of making art.
Is there anything intrinsically belonging to VR that cannot be expressed in other media? I mean, is there something that you've learned from VR that is unique to VR?
Well, the thing is, with video, you can watch a video. You're sitting there, the screen is over there. But with VR, you can actually be in the picture. You can be in the scene. You can have a 360 view. So this, whatever it is, if the scene is you standing in the middle of the road, you are able to actually control your surroundings. You can look up and down and up, left and right. But with video, it's limiting in that you're only given that view, the view that the cameraman has given you. So you, as a viewer, you don't have some control in some way.
It's true.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit about South Africa. I mean, how has the situation in South Africa changed in the past 26 years? I mean, how do you see the change since the end of apartheid to today? I mean, what are your feelings?
A lot of changes, as you mentioned, but a lot has also stayed the same. I think what we managed to do as South Africans, we managed to remove the skin of apartheid, but the skeleton is still there. Once in a while, it just jumps out and give us spooky moves. Sometimes when you drive in other parts of South Africa, you can actually see the remnants of disaster and remnants of apartheid. You can just see them everywhere, which is actually, for me, depressing. But as a nation, we are actually thriving to become better. We are actually moving forward, which is actually soothing as a South African, or as a parent, because now I'm a parent. So when you're a parent, you want your child to live in a better place, better than my grandmother's place.
Yes, I can see a change in also the woman's role in society in South Africa that has been substantial. I spent some time in South Africa. My daughter lived there, and I could feel the change. But do you think art is a tool to fight against injustice and prejudice?
it can be used to fight, but I think when one is fighting an invisible demon, you need all the tools that one can use. Art, you need writers, you need thinkers, you need philosophers, you need doers. So all these worlds or parts, if they come together, they can actually fight this monster that we've been living with for a very long time.
It's true. South America in general, Brazil in particular, are the places where the largest African diaspora ever happened. I mean, the largest diaspora from Africa actually came here. Do you feel at all connected with the Africans that migrated centuries ago? Do you think you share some kind of identity?
I would say yes, but it's the identity is kind of faint. It's not so clear. A lot, of course, have changed, but I always say there's I think in Brazil there is some kind of discrimination that you guys are going through, and I think I've followed the news. I think it was last year where people of color were protesting.
Yes.
And of course the minority, which is the Europeans, were I guess discriminating people of color in Brazil. So in a way there is...
Sometimes it's the people of color discriminating against the people of color directly as well, which is a shame.
I hear it's complicated like that.
Yeah.
So there is that relation, but of course I think the most the visible relation is the color of our skin, and of course the background, because I know some Brazilians still practice African traditions to this day.
Oh yes, some of them even more than in Africa. Yeah. Do you feel an African union is possible? Do you feel that this sense that an African union is possible?
I think it is, but the thing is, there's just so many elements. Like a lot of people are gaining from Africa. So as soon as there's a union, it means that people are together. And of course, if one wants to take whatever from Africa, they will try by all means to make sure that there is no union. So I don't know. I think it will be actually amazing, because it means that the whole continent will speak one language, not literally, but there will be a thread that runs through where we actually are connected in what we do in our economy, where we actually don't rely on other continents to come and help us. We have everything here, but the thing, there's no connection. There's just everything. There's just when countries are about to connect, something happens. It's either the leader dies or whatever. And there's always just some sabotage that happens in Africa, which when one thinks about it, it's just so depressing. So, to a point where you're like, maybe Africa's meant to be like this. And sometimes you're like, you know what? I want to fight for Africa. I want this relation to happen. There should be some cohesion that happens in Africa. And I know if that were to happen, the other countries or other continents should forget about their economy. But it's a dream.
Let's talk about color. Purple is struggle. Red is anger. And black. What is black?
Black is race. Black is me. Black is my geography. Black is who I am. So black is the color that exists in all the colors that you just mentioned. Black exists in blue. Black exists in purple. Black exists in red. Black also exists in green. So it's a thread that ties this work together, that says this work has been made by a Black woman. And for me, that's very important. People should see that before they see anything else. Like, oh, this work is done by a Black woman. Yeah.
And but your work is highly, I would say, highly saturated in color. You work with probably the most, you make color not decoration. Color is really a strong statement. All the
Mm-hmm.
colors that you work. And
Mm-hmm.
where did this come from?
When I thought of race, I wanted to speak of race in my work, and I wanted to speak about colonialism. And I thought to myself, how do I speak about race in a way that other visual artists have not touched on? How do I speak of race in a way that other thinkers have not thought about? And I thought of making the fabric or the garments very colorful and very solid color, to a point where it's the first thing that one sees, because it's overwhelming. It's everywhere. One cannot ignore it. And of course, my colors are different. Are divided into different stages. There's a blue body of work. There's a purple body of work, and there's a red body of work. And of course, all these colors, they have a different meaning. And it was just a thing that I wanted to pronounce in the work, because I was talking about color in South Africa and what it means to be of color, or a person of color in South Africa, or even a color in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And how about the stories? I mean, I have a sense that all your work is very linked to narrative,
Mm-hmm.
but these stories seems to come out from somewhere when the maids, the superheroes, the horses, all these elements, they are extremely theatrical, narrative. Where do they
Mm-hmm.
come from?
Well, I guess they come from my imagination.
Yeah, but I mean, they come from a
um,
childhood. Did you have a grandmother that used to tell you stories? Do you have a tradition of storytelling in your family? Did you like to invent stories when you were a kid? I mean, there should be a source somewhere.
um, I think it started from wanting to tell a different narrative. It started when my grandmother will tell me stories about how she was growing up and her experiences. And I remember when I was young, I wanted to change the ending in a kind of Hollywood way. You know, like Hollywood, people
Sure.
live happily ever after. Um, and I wanted that, but and I think with her, I didn't see a happily ever after. She spoke about dreams all the time. Like, I wish I've done that. I wish I did that. When I was young, I did that, but something happened. So I wanted to refine her stories, package them, make it more dreamy, and make the dream come true, but in another world, and that is the world that I have created.
Nice. Now there is threads in your work that relates to struggle, to condition, through energy. What do these threads really connect? I mean, I love the threads that come out of the dresses, the threads that connect people, that connect the dots. But what are they really connecting?
So in my work, there's literally threads that make up the work, and the thread, an invisible thread that is the work. So when I was thinking of the Blue series, I looked at my grandmother's stories and my mother's stories, and I took those stories and I made them um, into into visual images. Um, for example, the image that you have right now on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
um, the figure is caught in the title is caught in a rapture. The figure is caught in a spider web. So for me, that speaks of being trapped in in how we wear our hair. Hair is very important in the Black community. If you have hair like mine, which is dreadlocks, it means you fall in a different category. If you have straightened hair, it means that. If you're wearing a weave, it also, so each and every category has a meaning to it. And I remember we used to talk about hair a lot when I was growing up. Like, well, you should cut your hair, you should take care of your hair. It's a thing that you only have. And sometimes they'll say like it's your crown. When you take care of your hair, you can be dirty anyway, but take care of your hair, plait it, do anything. So hair has become that important in the Black community. And with that work, I wanted to speak about that. And so this thread that runs through the work, from the blue, purple, and the red. It's all these stories that are actually put together and are created to tell a story to the viewer. And of course, stories are a way we explore what it means to be human. We share stories. We reject some stories. We change some stories. And of course in Africa there's this tradition that when an older person dies and a library dies, it means it speaks volume in that in the olden days people didn't write their stories, they spoke about them. So in a way I'm taking that narrative or that tradition of stories and collecting them, but instead of me writing about them, I'm creating objects. So it's also another way of continuing that tradition where my grandmother left off and I'm taking over. And yeah, it's just stories and thread. Yeah, so that's a thread that actually runs through the works.
Amazing. Do you make your work with your own hands, or do you work with a lot of assistants?
I would. I'm a control freak. I usually work with a few sources depending on the work, on what the work is. For example, this work that you have right here on the screen, I was in Paris. I did a residency there. I was there for 3 months at McVal Museum. And part of that residency was creating a new work. And of course, the museum was paying for production, and I had to come up with an idea. And I looked at the idea. I was like, if I were to make this, it would take me the whole year to finish. And so the museum asked me, so if you were to have assistants, what kind of assistants would you like to have? And I thought of textile, what do you call them? Textilers. But the museum said, well, we have actually have a better idea. They introduced me to 3 young women who were studying at a textile university. So their way of handling the fabric was totally different from what I've experienced before, because my training is fine art and their training is textile. So they are more into the fabric more than it. So they were able to manipulate it. You can see there on that image where the fabric looks like roots. It's actually, you can actually see the roots coming out of the stomach and growing and taking over the wall. You can actually, your head, your mind is giving you, is moving that. And I think that's where VR comes in. Imagine if this work was on VR, where you can actually immerse yourself in the space. You can see where you can see the figure, like being covered with the purple roots everywhere. Where sometimes they become snakes and sometimes they become roots, but everything is moving. It's moving to a point where you can hardly see the body. The body now has become a shape. But these roots have taken over. So it depends. It depends on the body of it. But I always work with the seamstress. For me to work, I prefer working with professionals because they always have a way of, they have a way of knowing how to manipulate the fabric or whatever we're working on. So it depends.
That's interesting. And you mainly work in Johannesburg, right?
Yeah, my students in Johannesburg.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question based on a statement of yours. Is there opportunity in the midst of chaos?
Always, always.
Because this phrase, in the context
Yeah.
that we are living in, it's a very powerful statement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It,
It's funny. It always goes back to what to Africa. So what we talked about earlier on. When you and I are fighting, we are looking at each other and we are bickering, we're scratching each other. What happens when what happens on the sides? Other people are taking advantage of the situation. So there's always your enemy will always take advantage when you're not looking. And for me, that's that quote, the Sun Tzu quote was just so powerful. I remember when I read the poem, I was like, oh, this is just amazing. How do I make objects out of this? And it took me some time. Like 2 years later, I was like, boom, I've got it, and I made that work.
yeah. We're going through a transition time, a very unique transition time globally. Are we in another reality? We've been talking about virtual reality a lot, but are we in another reality? Has the world changed to the level that we might be in another reality?
I think for me, this has taught us to be in. It kind of feels like a parallel universe, if you know what I mean. And it's also like a preparation for us to go to Mars, because now Earth is contaminated. So I guess the next the next colonialism will happen in Mars. So I think it's just a preparation. You'll see in the next in a few years, I can be in China in an hour's time if I like, and I think that's where the world is going. And if one were to think about virtual exhibitions or virtual works, I feel like it's the future of of going to exhibitions. So now you get a link. So now imagine this: you have your goggles at home, and then you get a link, and then you plug your what do you call it? Yeah, your goggles, and then you are connected. Now you can actually be in that space, and you can have a 360 view of the work while you are sitting in your living room. So now you don't have to fly to Brazil to look at the work or fly to Joburg to look at the work. The work can be anywhere. And I think that's why virtual reality is so exciting, especially right now during COVID or during this pandemic. It made me look at virtual reality in a very different way. And the possibilities are endless.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Yes, Mary. And what are your next projects? I mean, what are the next things you're up to?
I'm excited about a solo show that is going to happen in Lyon. Musée Lyon in France. I'm excited about a show.
That's Thierry Raspail and Thierry Prat, right?
Who are they?
The curators of the Musée d'Art Contemporain de Lyon.
Oh,
no, not that.
No, he left. Yes,
yeah.
he left. He left like about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I used to know him well.
Yeah, so now there's a director, there's a woman director there. I forgot her name, and yeah. What was I saying? So and then
the new project.
And a couple of group shows, and I have a solo show next year, February. So I'm preparing for that now because my work it takes time to make. So I always have to, I always give myself time to make whatever I need to do so I can have that artist personal touch. Because if I were to rely on other people to make my work, which would be easy, but I also prefer to just, have that touch in the work. And of course, so I rely a lot on assistants, meaning that they assist in the work. What else is happening? Yeah, a couple of group shows around the world. Yeah.
Let me ask you, what would be a taboo subject to be dealt in South Africa? What is something that you...
Yeah, geez, I'm thinking. Nothing. You can talk about anything in South Africa, nothing will happen to you. You can talk about homosexuality. You can talk about satanism, if that's what you want. You can talk about anything. But for me, personally, it would be, let me see, violence against children. I almost, yeah, I think that will be a big no-no. But really, you can actually basically just talk about anything, nothing will happen to you.
Yeah.
So we with our laws are protecting us in that way. But of course, you do get once in a while where a homosexual was killed or a queer was killed because of hate crime. You do get hate crimes. And right now, we also have a second pandemic in South Africa where women are being killed, and it happened during the lockdown, where there was just a high number of women being killed by their partners. So that's very alarming right now, and that's very scary, and it's just a topic that is so dear to me and depressing at the same time. But one cannot help but be a fighter. One has to fight, and that whether fighting through making art or fighting or marching on the streets.
What do you miss the most when you are out of South Africa? What makes you feel you want to go back? What do you miss the most?
I hate being a foreigner. I just hate the idea of not understanding the language wherever I am. It makes me feel helpless. And the thing is about South Africa, things are not so bad. So I think for me it's just language. Language creates a lot of barriers.
What have you learned during the lockdown that you have not learned before? What was the lesson of the lockdown for you?
Patience.
Patience.
I've learned to be patient. I started painting again. At some point, it's like, because I make colossal works, whether it's making dresses or constructing the life-size fiberglass figures. I realized with paint, you need to be patient. It's one mark at a time. And if you mess it up, if you're not careful, you can easily mess up a mark. So there's this big canvas that I've started painting during the lockdown. But it's funny because this painting, I've been meaning to paint it, but I just never had the time or the patience, obviously, to actually paint. So I've learned a lot about patience.
Yeah. And what in your home? What are you? Do you speak Xhosa, or do you speak any other local language, or you just speak English?
I speak Siswati, which is my home language. Siswati, which is comes from the eastern region of South Africa. My partner speaks Sesotho. He was born in Soweto.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a cacophony of language.
Yeah, I found out about South Africa. Such a complex language structure.
And then I have a 5-year-old. We mostly speak to him in English because of the school that he goes to. But he can also understand my language and his father's language.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. This was such a nice conversation. It was a great opportunity to connect at this window. We're preparing a show with your work, for next year. It was supposed to be this year, obviously it got delayed.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to have. I mean, I was extremely impressed by your exhibition at the Serpentine. No, not Serpentine, at the Somerset House. At the Somerset House.
Oh yeah, great! Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it tremendously, and I felt a sense of originality and of connection, and something that touched me immediately. And I felt that I would love to do something with you. And
yeah. And I wanted to ask you. So how's the virtual reality scene in Brazil? Is it growing? Is it quite big?
Well, it's growing everywhere in the world, but it's growing a lot by individual initiatives, not by a collective movement of people embracing it. I think it's just individual experiments that are taking place. I'm interested in it, but I mean, I'm a curator of contemporary art at large. But at a point, I felt, I mean, there are so many artists trying to create a new grammar. We have to address this as a new medium of itself. So this is a museum show that we're doing only of virtual reality works. So we have Anthony Gormley, we have Laurie Anderson, we have yourself, we have Olafur Eliasson, we have many artists that are exploring these, and we want to reveal the potential of the medium to a larger audience in experiments on how especially make a big experiment on how the audience will relate to a show that is 100% virtual, but presential, physical. You go to a place, you experience the place. It's theatrical. It has the sets. It has everything. But it's about something that's happening not there, but in this other dimension.
Sounds amazing. Yeah.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.